happy Sabbath and welcome to Sabbath School, everyone. Right now we'll be getting into our song service. So come on, join us in praise and worship as we sing hymn number 15, My Maker and My King, 1-5, My Maker and My King. Will be hymn number 633, When We All Get to Heaven. Sing the wondrous love of Jesus, sing his mercy and his grace. In the mansions bright and blessed, he'll prepare a place for us. When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, he'll sing and shout for victory. While we walk the pilgrim pathway, clouds will overspread the sky. But when traveling days are over, not a shadow, not a sign. When we all get to heaven, what a day of rejoicing that will be. When we all see Jesus, he'll sing and shout for victory. Let us then be delivered. Glory to his name. I was lost in sin in the valley of death. I am delivered. Praise the Lord. Take a grip, take another grip. Hold on and never let go. No matter what the people in the world may say, hold on and never let go. Take a grip, take another grip. Hold on and never let go. No matter what the people in the world may say, hold on and never let go. I need somebody help me live cheap. I need somebody help me live cheap. I need somebody to help me live Jesus. Clap your hands and help me live Jesus. Stamp your feet and help me live Jesus. Read your Bible and help me live Jesus. The time to be happy is now, and the place to be happy is here, right here. And the way to be happy is to make others happy, and we'll have a little heaven down here. Amen. 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 Amen.
Hello, boys and girls. This is Aunt Fernita, and I have a wonderful story for you called God's Rainbow Promise. Today's memory verse is from Genesis chapter 9, verse 13. It says, "I have set my rainbow in the clouds. It will be a sign." The message for today's story is we thank God for His promises. Have you ever seen a rainbow? Sometimes you can see one after it rains. Noah and his family saw the very first rainbow God made. Do you know why? The animals were restless. Monkeys chattered constantly and swung wildly around the bars in their cages. Parrots shrieked. Everybody was eager to get off of the ark. Finally, God said to Noah, "It's time. It's time to leave the ark." So God sent an angel to open the heavy door. The animals thundered down the ramp. Horses kicked up their heels as they ran. Kangaroos bounced happily back and forth. Eagles soared and lions roared. Noah and his family felt happy and sad at the same time. They were very happy to be out of the ark, but they were sad at what they found outside of the ark. The earth was so ugly. Big boulders covered the land, even though new green grass sprouted almost everywhere and young trees were beginning to poke up through the ground. It didn't look like anything like the beautiful world that they had left when they entered the ark, but they were safe. God had kept His promise. So Noah built an ark and gathered his family around it. They thanked God for keeping His promise to save them from the terrible flood. They praised God for His protection. God gave Noah's family a special blessing. Then God gave them a promise. "I am making a promise to you and to all who come after you. Even though the rain will fall, I will never again destroy the whole world with a flood. Look into the sky, and you will see the sign of my promise." Noah and his family looked up. A brilliant rainbow stretched across the heavens. They had never seen anything like it before. It was brilliant with reds and oranges and yellows and greens and blues and violet. "Whenever you see the rainbow in the clouds," God said, "you can be sure that I will keep my promise." Noah and his family stayed near the ark for a very long time. They sang songs of praise. They prayed prayers of thanksgiving. They had a rainbow sign. They knew that God would always keep His promises. And we know that too. God has never again covered the whole earth with water. Even today, He still keeps His rainbow promise. Just as God kept His promise to Noah and his family, God will keep His promises to us. We can find His promises in His Word, the Bible, and we can be sure He will keep them. Why? Because He loves us very much.
This podcast was brought to you by Gracelink.net and Studio El Piso. For more children's resources, please visit Gracelink.net.
Good morning, primaries, and happy Sabbath. Now, last week our lesson was about the building of the sanctuary, and our lesson for today is about another building. Now, the name of our lesson for this week is A Beautiful House. The message: I worship God when I show respect and reverence for His house. Now, Vilama's mother was going to take her to India to see one of the most beautiful buildings, the Taj Mahal. But this building is not as beautiful as the house Solomon built for God. Now, one day, King Solomon, he called one of his servants and he said to him, God's house has to be built. And I think that now is the time to begin. Now, all the Israelites knew about his father, King David's plan to build a special house for God. But God told him no. Now, he fought so many wars and so much blood was shed that God told him that his son would build the house for him. Now, after 4 years of being king, Solomon began to build the house for God. And he sought help. He got help from Hiram, who was king of Tyre. Now, he wrote him a letter. He said, Dear King Hiram, you were a great friend of my father David. He was not able to build a house to honor the Lord as he wanted. I am to do it. I would be grateful if you could supply some cedar trees from your mountains. I will send men to help your servants do the work, and I will pay you whatever you ask. And then he finished his letter and he signed, Yours faithfully, King Solomon. Now, King Hiram, he was happy to receive King Solomon's letter. And he sent a message that he would provide lumber for the temple, an artist who knew how to work with gold, silver, and bronze, just like Bezalel and Aholiab, who would know how to use the stone and the lumber and the linen to make all the things that was needed for the temple and make them beautifully as well. Now, thousands of people worked on the temple. King Solomon, he sent 30,000 men to King Hiram to cut down the trees and bring them home, and 80,000 men to cut the stones from the mountains and shape them into beautiful blocks. Now, the workers themselves, they showed reverence for God and His house. They didn't do any work inside of the temple. They didn't make any noise inside of the temple. They did all the work outside, and when it was completed, they brought it into the temple. Now, when it was finished, it was beautiful. On the inside, the stone walls, they were covered with wood. And then they were decorated with carvings of angels, palm trees, and flowers, and then covered with gold. The ceiling and the floor covered in gold. The two angels that were to be placed in the most holy place where the ark of God would be, they were made with olive wood, yes, but then they were covered with gold. Now, all the furniture was beautifully made. And then King Solomon, he looked at it and he said, Who can really build a house to show how great God is? Not even the highest heavens can contain Him. Now, boys and girls, the God of heaven is not like the heathen gods which they would make with their hands. They take wood and stone, and then when they place it in their temples, that is where they stay. Now, our God is great. But yet, He met with His people when they came to worship Him. So, boys and girls, we too can show respect for God and show respect for His house. So what we do and what we say inside of God's house should also be acts of worship. So we don't run and play in God's house. We don't write on the benches and the chairs and stick chewing gum under them and ask our friends what they did in school during the week, because we want to remember what the message told us, that we need to show respect and reverence for God's house. Now Psalm 84:1 tells us, "How lovely is your dwelling place, Lord Almighty." And boys and girls, what is this? Yes, this is our memory verse for this week. So as we conclude our lesson for today, boys and girls, a beautiful house. Let us continue to study our lesson. Let us remember the message for this week, to show respect and reverence for God's house. So enjoy the rest of the Sabbath. Be safe until next week. Bye for now.
Good morning, boys and girls. Happy Sabbath and welcome again to another junior class lesson study review. Now, this week's lesson is entitled My New Neighbor. Have you had a new neighbor? Either recently or maybe before? What was it like? Did your new neighbor look like everybody else? Or was your new neighbor maybe a little strange? Did they look funny? Did they act funny? But more importantly, how did you treat your new neighbor? Were you welcoming? Did you say, "Hello, nice to meet you. Welcome to the neighborhood"? Or did you turn away simply saying, "Oh, that person is not like us," and just going about your everyday life like normal without a care in the world for your neighbor? Well, let's see what our lesson has to say about neighbors. Now, in our story this week, Jesus is speaking to or teaching some Jews or some people about the right things to do. And they're having a discussion. But in every group, there is always someone that is just mischievous. Someone who sets out to make a little trouble, cause a little drama. But Jesus wasn't having it because he was smarter than these people. So in this group, there was a lawyer. And the lawyer, brilliant though he may be, decided that he wanted to catch Jesus, saying something that potentially may cause a little drama, something controversial. So the lawyer asks, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus responded with a question. How strange! An answer in the form of a question? And here's what Jesus asked. What is written in the law? How do you read it? In other words, Jesus was asking him, what does the law say about how you are to get eternal life? And so the lawyer, all arrogant and stuff, feeling like he knows everything, decided to answer because he believed that he knew the answer. So the lawyer answered and said, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." Do you know what, boys and girls? This is our power text, and it is taken from Luke 10:27. So when the lawyer gave this answer, Jesus smiled. He said, "Nice, you're a brilliant guy. You are correct." The lawyer wasn't satisfied. How could Jesus make me answer my own question? I need to ask another. So the lawyer decided to ask Jesus, "Teacher, then tell me, who is my neighbor?" Who really is our neighbor? So Jesus saw the trap that the lawyer wanted to set and decided to answer by telling a story. So the story that Jesus told started with him talking about a man. A man traveled along the road. He was going from Jerusalem to Jericho. And while on the road, he was ambushed. It was chaos. robbers came out, and you know what? They were so evil and cruel. Not only did they steal everything that he had, but they beat him. They beat him almost to the point of death. And then they stripped him naked and left him at the side of the road. How awful was that? I mean, even if you took everything, but then you beat me to death and leave me naked, it was the most embarrassing, most painful, most scary thing that anyone could ever experience. And there this traveler was, laying at the side of the road, hurt, embarrassed, sad, and barely breathing, almost to the point where he was non-existent. And a priest, someone who is supposed to be good and kind, sees the traveler laying there and passes and pretends as if they don't see that someone is in need or that someone was injured or hurt. How strange. Then a Levi, another person who is accustomed to working in the church and serving for God, he sees the man and says, "Whoa, he's dirty," and passes the man straight as if he was roadkill. How interesting. And then a third person comes by. It was a Samaritan with a donkey. And this was so strange because Samaritans, they don't particularly have good relationship with Jews. They tend to be warring against each other, and I'll explain a little more about that further down. But do you know something? Even though the traveler was a Jew, maybe someone who probably hated him, the Samaritan immediately steps into action like a superhero and decides to grab a hold of the man and check to make sure he's alive. And then he took his oil and his wine, wiped him up, cleaned off his wound, bandaged it, and put him on his donkey. And then the Samaritan carried this man to an inn, or what we would call a hotel, and carried him to this place and asked the innkeeper to take care of him and paid for it all. Wasn't that amazing? And possibly later on he would have passed by and checked to make sure that the man was okay and ready to go back in public, and he paid for everything. Who does that? A Samaritan? Not only doing that for a complete stranger, he also did it for someone that potentially would have hated him. Then Jesus, after telling his story, asked the lawyer a very important question. Of the three, the priest, the Levi, and the Samaritan, who was the one that was the true neighbor? So the lawyer started to think. He didn't like that question. You know why? Because the story highlighted two very important religious people, which were the priest and the Levi, as persons who were the bad guys in the story because they didn't do the right thing. And the Levi knew that Samaritans are persons that they don't like. So he didn't really understand why he was the hero in the story. He did not even want to say Samaritan. So he responded by saying, "Lord, it's the one who showed mercy. Mercy to the traveler who got robbed." And Jesus once again smiled and said, but you are right once more. The lawyer was a little nervous now because he realized what Jesus was saying. Now, what do we learn from our lesson? So, Anyone, even a stranger to God, is classed as a neighbor. To be rewarded with eternity, we are to love God with all our hearts and all our minds, with everything. But not only that, we are to love our neighbors or love anyone who comes in contact with us as if we loved ourselves. Don't you want what is best for you? I want what is best for me, and I want to be happy. And this same feeling that we have towards ourselves, we should equally have toward others. We should want others to have the best of everything. We should want others to have all the happiness in the world. Just like we would want to be treated, we should treat others. So when that neighbor comes along, that new neighbor comes along, and maybe they may look a little different, or they may not be as funny or as noisy as we are, or as talkative. They may be a little shy, or they may look a little weird in our eyes. Does that mean that we treat them any different? Oh no! Our responsibility is to treat them as we would want to be treated. Wouldn't you want to be welcomed and loved and cared for if you went into a new neighborhood? So when new persons move into your neighborhood, into your school, into your job, into your life, when new persons God allow you to meet, we are to welcome them, to be kind, and like the Samaritan, treat them with great kindness and generosity. Because you know what? If we were in their position, that's exactly how we would want to be treated. Point number 2 tells us our power text. Let's look at it. When we love God, He helps us to love our neighbors. So sometimes people hate us. They may be strangers, they may be co-workers, and they hate us, they don't like us. But at the end of the day, they are considered neighbors. And if we want to be rewarded with heaven, then we are to treat them with kindness and respect, even though they don't do the same for us. This is not easy, and we are unable to do something like that on our own. So do you know what we are to do? We are to ask God to help us. The more we love God, is the more we learn how to love others. And so when we pay attention to how much time we spend with God in giving Him love and praise and honor, we are better able to love and share that love that we receive from God with others. And our third point, and very, very critical point, is it doesn't matter the color of someone's skin, the religious beliefs, or any belief of a particular person. It does not matter how that person may act. At the end of the day, we are all people. And Jesus Christ would have died for us all, because despite our differences, He loves us equally. And God wants that for us as well. Although we may look different, we may act different, we may be different in general from others, it does not mean that we are to treat persons bad because of it. In fact, God wants us to love those persons as well. Not just the persons that we are comfortable with, but also the persons that we may not always be comfortable with. That's how we truly share Jesus Christ with others, when we behave and act with the character that Jesus Himself has. So boys and girls, I hope that as we go out into the world, that you will love God with all your heart and your mind, with everything. And then don't forget, love everyone, love your neighbor as yourself. Bye.
Hello everyone, my name is Javan Ellie, and today we will be talking about this week's mission story, where we will be heading to the country of Indonesia. So here we go. The real Jesus. Arthur, a young student missionary, felt a little sad when he arrived on the Raja Ampat Islands in Indonesia. He was supposed to teach school for 1 year in a village where no Seventh-day Adventists lived, but he was all alone. Why am I alone? He prayed. But was Arthur really alone? No. Almost immediately after he prayed, he realized that Jesus was with him. So he prayed a new prayer, asking for help to tell the villagers that Jesus is coming soon. Soon Arthur learned that the villagers thought that Jesus had already come. A man who once lived on the island had claimed that he was Jesus. After he had died, the villagers began worshipping him. Arthur knew that the man couldn't be Jesus. The Bible teaches that the real Jesus warned that some people would falsely claim to be him. Jesus said, "Then if anyone says to you, 'Look, here's the Christ,' or 'Look, here he is there,' do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will rise and show signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. But take heed, see, I have told you all things beforehand." Mark 13:21-23. On Sunday, 2 of Arthur's new friends took him to their church. When the pastor asked him to introduce himself, Arthur said, "I am the new teacher at the school. I also can help if you are sick." It was true. In addition to being a teacher, Arthur had learned how to take care of sick people. But the pastor was not interested. He wanted to tell Arthur about the man who had claimed to be Jesus. He was a great man, the pastor said. Arthur prayed. He did not know what to do. When the pastor saw that Arthur did not praise the man who had claimed to be Jesus, he became angry. Everyone in church became angry. Arthur sadly left the church. He didn't know how he would be able to tell the villagers about the real Jesus. Outside, an old woman came up to him. "You said that you can help the sick," she said. "Can you help my husband?" In her home, Arthur checked her husband's blood pressure. It was very high. Arthur suggested that the man eat healthy foods that lower the blood pressure, and he prayed with the couple. As he left, he heard the old man yell at his wife, "What can that child teach me about health?" But back at his house, Arthur fell onto his knees and prayed. "Lord, I surrender all to you," I said. "Please help me." A few days later, the old woman appeared at Arthur's door. Her husband had been eating healthy foods and he wanted his blood pressure to be checked again. Arthur was so happy. Someone in the village wanted to talk. Someone in the village needed help. "Thank you, God," he prayed silently. "Thank you for answering my prayers." The old man's health improved every day after that. He began to like Arthur. Soon he and his wife loved Arthur as if he were their own grandson. When the other villagers saw their love, they began to be kind to Arthur too. Arthur soon had many friends in the village, and he was able to tell them about the real Jesus. Arthur's favorite verse in the Bible says, "I can do all things through Christ who strengtheneth me." Philippians 4:13. The real Jesus can help us do everything. That is it for this week's mission story. I hope you enjoyed and have a happy Sabbath.
Hi everyone, welcome to this week's craft session. Today we are creating So let's begin. So first we would use our 9-inch by 9-inch cardboard and create a border around it. Alright, that border is going to measure 1.5 inches from the edge. So what we'll do is use our long ruler and mark at different intervals 1.5 inches. And then use the ruler to draw a line that connects all the points at 1.5 inches. And I'm using a pen. You can use a marker just so that the line is more visible. We'll do that all the way around. And never mind if your cardboard has blemishes on it, just like mine, because those are not going to show. Alright, what we're doing actually is recycling old cardboard and making something new out of it. Okay, so now we have our border that measures 1.5 inches all the way around. Next, we would create 2-inch boxes on the inside of this border, 3 boxes each. And to do that, we would use the ruler again and measure 2 inches down from the inner line and draw our lines going across. So 1, 2, and we draw our lines going across, and we go again. 1, 2, and we connect those 2 points to get our straight line. And each row is supposed to measure 2 inches from the other. Next, we turn our cardboard in the other direction and do the same thing. Alright, I'm hoping that you all are seeing the lines. What it actually gives us, or what it's supposed to look like, is a tic-tac-toe box. Alright, I'm hoping that you'll see that. So in all, we would have 9 boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And we're actually going to number these boxes. So with my marker, I'm going to number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Alright, so we have 9 boxes in total. Next, we would use a spare piece of cardboard. Now this is the back of a package that I'm using. We put it under our frame, and using our X-Acto knife, we are going to cut the inner box out from the frame. Now, putting something under the box, the cardboard, is very important, because when we use the knife, we have to apply pressure, and you don't want the surface that you're cutting on to get damaged if it's something that you need to use again. If it's something like this that can be thrown away, it's fine. So this protects the other surface. And please, please, please be mindful that X-Acto knives are very sharp. So do this under the supervision of an adult. The reason why we are not using a pair of scissors to cut this out is because we want to leave the outsides intact. Alright, so I'm going to cut this out now. Now, before I cut, let me just tell you what the other procedures are going to be. When we cut this out, we are using our strips of 1.5 inch by 9 inch paper. We use the 4 strips and stick them on the edges of our border, so that will cover the blemishes that you see, like this one here. This is going to be covered. All right, and then we would put this frame on our second 9 by 9 sheet. Okay, so we're going to stick it onto our second 9 by 9 sheet. All right, so I'm going to do that now. So first we cut the inner box out. Second, we stick our strips around the frame that remains. And third, we will stick the frame onto our second 9 by 9 sheet. Alright, so this is how we would cut our inner frame out, and this is supposed to pop out like this. Alright, so we'd have a piece with our numbers and a frame that separates, covered with our strips and applied to our second 9x9 piece of Bristol board. Now, as you notice, this, like I said, is the back of our package that I cut to the dimensions that I need. Alright, the blemishes are going to be covered, and I already have that done. See that, guys? Now we'll put this aside. So we have the strip stuck and it's on the secondary 9x9 piece. Now what we will do is take our numbered piece and cut the blocks out. Alright, so now we can use our scissors, and let's do that. Oh, before we do that, sorry, I forgot this most important part. Before we cut these blocks, on the flip side of the blocks, we would put our sticker. Right? Put this sticker, we can apply this sticker to another sheet, the other sheet that is cut by 6 by 6 inches, because when we cut out of the frame, we would have a piece that measures 6 inches by 6 inches. Right? And what I did was put a text on the inside. Now, this text is not just a random text. It says, "For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you." Jeremiah 29:11. The entire text, or part of it is left out because of a lack of space, but it says, not to harm you, and plans to give you a hope and a future. That's what God wants for us. And this puzzle should help us to remember that God is able to take the puzzle pieces of our lives, put them together, and give us a plan for hope and for our future. Alright, so we flip back over, and now we can cut the boxes out. Alright, and it's okay to use a pair of scissors to do this. It may be a little more challenging because of the thickness of the cardboard. See, this one went flying, but with a little perseverance, you'll get it done. So of course we would end up with 9 boxes, and on the other side of each box we would have a different part of this puzzle piece picture. Alright, so we're done. So they're all mixed up. This is how, and this represents how we feel sometimes about the things that happen in our lives. Sometimes we have experiences and we feel as though the seasons in our lives aren't beneficial, and that the experiences we go through are puzzling, and we sometimes question God. But guess what, guys? We would have these puzzles, these pieces that won't make sense. But when we put God in the middle, through prayer and through following what His Word says, everything will fall into place. We can surely trust God to take the puzzling pieces of our lives and put them in place, so that is the only way our lives would make sense. And that way we would have something of beauty, and it would be something worthwhile once we continue to pray and ask God for guidance. Now I'm mixing the puzzle up, putting numbers where they're not supposed to be, because sometimes that's what we do when we try to do things on our own. Right? This is us trying to do things on our own without God's guidance, and I'm leaving one out. Right? So when we flip these pieces over, this is how it looks now. and using God's promise and praying and asking God for his guidance, we can start to put the pieces in place. Alright, so we slide.
Hello, good day, and a happy Sabbath. My name is Carmel, and today I will be doing your nature nugget. Today's nature nugget is on one of the gentle giants of the canine family. Today's nugget is on the golden retriever. The golden retriever, also known as the perfect family dog, came to be around 1925 when it was crossbred by a Mr. Dudley Marjorie Banks. Mr. Dooley wanted the perfect companion to help him with his everyday tasks and to move around the forest with and help locate things. So he crossbreed two separate dogs, one being a yellow retriever and the other being a Tweed Water Spaniel. The Tweed Water Spaniel now being extinct. And he crossbreed these two dogs to create the wavy and great companion that we know today, known as the Golden Retriever. The Golden Retriever usually comes in 3 different coats from 3 different areas, one being from Canada, another breed being from Britain, and the third breed being from America. The males usually weighing to around 65 to 75 pounds and in height at least 22 to 24 inches, with the females being large but much smaller than the males, weighing around 55 to 65 pounds, with around 20 to 23 inches in height. These great companions are loving guardian dogs. However, they're usually not used to protect the family, as they may rather help the bandit find the treats and toys than run him out of the home. However, their keen sense for retrieving things, as their name, the retriever, goes unmatched, as services around the world use them to help find persons who are missing and lost and help find things. These great and loving companions go well with the water, as they have 2 coats. The outer coat, which is water resistant, which helps them be able to swim around, whether to play with children or help hunt for fishes in the water, and the inner coat that helps keep them warm. These great companions know mostly love and family and protection to everything that they hold dear. They're active and fun-loving, and we have a lot to learn from these great friends. Romans chapter 12 verse 9, which says, "Love must be sincere, hate what is evil, cling to what is good." We have a lot to learn from these loving and caring companions, and there's much to learn from each other and the love we share for one another. Let's keep uplifting and loving each other. Love our parents, our brothers, our sisters, our friends, and let's learn from these companions and stick to one another. And again, my name is Ken McCarman, and this is your Nature Nugget.
Lady, did I did. Oh, 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 oh. Lady, did I did. Oh, 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 oh. The land was ripe with the wrong, with praise to Baal in every song. With each day, the knowledge of God trampled down and down. It was with Ahab, apostasy start. He led Israel down the idolatrous path. Soon there remained no knowledge of God left in Israel's heart. Israel got bad, badder and bad, with people behaving madder than mad. No concern for the God who led from the start. God soon said, enough is enough, and for the next 3 years, the wasser line bust, no dew nor rain, till Israel turns and remembers my name. From the countryside, Elijah came to deliver the judgment in God's name. No dew nor rain, till Israel turns and remembers my name. From the countryside, Elijah came to deliver the judgment in God's name. No dew nor rain, till Israel turns and remembers my name. Did I, did I. Oh, 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 oh. Did I, did I. Oh, 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 oh. Apostasy in Israel. There is no other word to describe it. Look at it. Think about it. Apostasy. Could you believe that? In Israel of all places. What is apostasy? Apostasy is the abandonment or renunciation of religious belief or principle. The people took all they believed about God and decided they didn't believe that anymore. Just so, the people who God had led out of slavery, guided through a desert, and brought to the promised land, they had decided they didn't believe in Him anymore. They took all they knew and believed about God and put it in the garbage outside for the rubbish truck. That is what Israel had done. Could you believe that? The king Ahab was the mastermind and responsible for this absolute madness. You see, he did more evil in the eyes of God than all the kings that came before him. And believe me, that is not a compliment, because there were some really wicked men who came before him. This man thought it was small thing to get God vexed. This man really thought it was small thing to get God vexed. This man really believed that it was real small thing to get God real vexed. He is the one who introduced Baal worship in Israel. And if this wasn't enough, Ahab married a woman. She wasn't any ordinary woman, you know. She was the daughter of Ethbaal, king of Sidon. But to top it off, the woman was a high priestess of Baal. So now, Ahab, king of Israel, served Baal and worshipped him. Then the next thing that started happening was the construction of temples to Baal all over Israel. Now, if this wasn't bad enough, Ahab took a piece of wood, carved it and made it look like the false goddess Asherah. Ahab did more to get the Lord vexed than any of the kings that came before him. You see, it was most of the people, not all of them. In the mountains of Gilead, east of the Jordan River, there was a man. One man. He had no high position in life. He didn't live in any great city. But you see, he saw what was happening in the land. He saw the utter craziness that was taking place in Israel. He remembered what happened when Israel continued on the path of getting God vexed. He hoped in his heart that God would not totally destroy Israel because of what they were doing. He was one man. But you see, no matter how bad it gets, God always has a man. No matter how ridiculous things in the society get, God only needs one man to get the job done. Elijah was given a message. Elijah was given a mission, and there was no hesitation. Elijah didn't ask to be the Lord's messenger, but when the word of the Lord came to him, nothing else mattered to him. Even though taking such a message to the king could mean certain death, Elijah didn't biz about them. Elijah left his mountain home and traveled day and night till he got to Samaria. On his arrival at the palace, the man didn't even wait to be announced or introduced. He walked straight into the palace dressed in rough clothes, which was an identifying mark of the prophets at that time. Past the soldiers, past the palace administration, he walked as if he owned the place. The man walked straight up to Ahab, who was seated on his throne. Elijah then looked Ahab dead in his eyes. The king was in shock. I mean, after all, how did the man make it past the guards? Is there anyone could just walk into a palace? But on top of that, he didn't even bow or show any respect to the position of king that Ahab held. He looked at him man to man. Then Elijah started to speak. As the Lord lives, before whom I stand, there shall be no rain these years except by my word. Judgment had finally come from God. You see, the worshippers of Baal had claimed that it was him who sent the rain and the dew and all the bounties of heaven. But now God had shut them off. God shut down the water treatment plant. God hit Israel hard like Wassa. No water till I say so. The message hit Ahab like when some friends chain you up to try roast pepper in a doubles. For the first time, it starts off as a small thing. You're not really taking it on. But as soon as you take your first bite, your mouth starts to burn. Then your hands start to burn. Then your stomach starts to feel hot and burn. Then in an effort to ease the pressure, your body starts to cold sweat. Then mucus that you didn't even know you had starts to flow. Yes, start coming out your nose too. And now you're wondering whose stupid idea was this. But by the time this experience was happening to Ahab, Elijah had already slipped out. Could you imagine how Ahab was feeling? First of all, a man walks into your palace and delivers such a message and nobody stops him. But then the man slips back out without you even getting a chance to arrest him. This has to be the biggest security blunder in history. Ahab instructed his men at once to find Elijah and bring him back to the palace immediately. Elijah, already out of the palace, was heading to the brook of Cherith as the Lord had directed him. There, the Lord promised him that he would have food and water, fresh flowing water from the brook, and ravens were to bring him bread every day. Every day the ravens brought Elijah bread and meat. I don't know where they got it from, but what I do know is that when God promises that he will take care of you, he most definitely will. And he will do it in such a way to make you sit back and say, that could only be God. After a while, the brook dried up. I mean, there was no rain to replenish the brook. You see, as soon as Elijah spoke those words to the king, God closed the main water line from heaven. The word had started to spread as well about the rough-looking man who just barged in the palace with a word from God saying water was going until he said so. Some people refused to believe. I mean, after all, the place was green. The streams and rivers were flowing. How could this be possible? Oh well, so they thought. Whether you wanted to believe it or not, that didn't change the fact that water gone. And God said none for all you. Could you imagine his years since he bathed? Could you imagine no water to flush the toilet? Or to give your dog some water? Or to wash your clothes? Or to water the plants? No water even to drink. In Trinidad, if you take water for 2 weeks, people are ready to burn tires in the road and fight with the government as well as Wassa. So could you imagine what would happen in a country if they had to go without water for years? In looking at the situation that was unfolding, Jezebel as well as her prophets sought to encourage the people that Elijah was wrong and that the rain would come if they continued to trust in Baal. This was all well and good when the place was looking green and still and the rivers were flowing. As time went on, however, with no rain falling, the rivers and streams of the countryside dried up. The Lord was running Wassa, and the people could burn tires, protest, curse the government, march around the Red House, complain how the government don't like poor people. It really didn't matter. God hit Israel hard like Wassa. No water till I say so. The Lord then told Elijah to go to Zarephath, where he directed a widow there to organize him. When Elijah got to the city gate, he saw a woman there collecting sticks. He said to her, "Ma'am, please bring me some water to drink." When she turned around to get the water, he also said, "Also, you know what? Bring me some bread." The woman then said to Elijah, "Sir, as the Lord lives, all I have is a little oil and some flour. I am getting these sticks to make one last bread so that my son and I may eat it and die." Elijah then said to her, "Don't worry about it. Go and make something for me to eat first, and then go and make something for you and your son. The Lord has said that your oil and flour will not run out until I open the Wassa line again." Of all the bold-faced things to ask, how could you tell a woman who is going to make her last meal and die to make something for you to eat first, and then make something for herself and her son? That is a next level of bold-facedness. However, this is also a next level of faith. You see, what God wants us to do doesn't have to make sense to us. What we have to do is trust him whether it makes sense or not, and that is what the woman did. The woman was willing to put her needs as well as her life and that of her sons on the line to follow the word of God. The woman was willing to sacrifice all to follow the instructions of God, and that is why she was saved. The woman did just as Elijah had said, and guess what? Her flour and oil didn't run out, so that they were able to eat and keep on eating. One day, however, the woman's son fell ill. The boy was so ill that he died. When the woman saw this, she started crying and said to Elijah, "What have I done to you, man of God, that you have come to call my sin to remembrance and kill my son?" Elijah took the boy in his arms and then placed him on his bed. Elijah then prayed to God, saying, "Lord, what's this? Have you decided to punish the woman with whom you sent me to stay?" Elijah stretched his body over the boy 3 times. Then he prayed, "Lord, please return this boy's life." The Lord heard Elijah's prayer, and the boy became alive once again. When the woman saw her son alive once again, she said to Elijah, "Now I know that the words you have spoken are true, and that you are a man of God." After 3 years, the word of the Lord once again came to Elijah. The Lord told Elijah, "Bro, let me go down the road and deal with these fellas." So Elijah went back to Samaria to show himself to Ahab. As he went along the way, he saw the effects of the bad famine that was in the land. What is famine? No food. No food anywhere. No grocery, no parlor, no market, and no water. Nothing. The governor of the king's palace was a man by the name of Obadiah. Now he was a godly man, so much so that when Jezebel decided to kill the prophets of God, he took them and hid them in 2 caves and fed them. Since there was no food, Ahab and Obadiah decided to split up and search the country for food so that they would at least be able to save some of the animals. As Obadiah went on his way, he met Elijah. He immediately fell on his face and said, "Are you my Lord Elijah?" Elijah said to him, "Yes, I am Elijah, and go and tell Ahab that Elijah is here." Obadiah replied, "Me, buddy? Me? You want to come and kill me? What have I done to you to deserve this?" Listen, you don't know what has been going on down here now. Ahab has been looking all over the place for you. The man said word into all the neighboring countries looking for you, and when they reported that you weren't there, he made them swear and oath that you weren't there. And now you want me to just go up the road and say that I just happened to meet you on the road? The king will surely kill me. You want me to go and tell him that I have seen you, and next thing the Spirit of the Lord takes you to another place and I don't know where you're going, and I can't find you when I get back? Listen, I am a good man. I try my best to be a good man. When Jezebel wanted to kill all the prophets, I hid 100 of them from her and kept them alive. Now you want me to just go to my death? Elijah then said to him, "Now dog, don't beat up. I waiting right here for all you." So Obadiah went and told Ahab what happened and brought him to meet Elijah. When Ahab saw Elijah, he said to him, "Is you the man who causing all this trouble in the place?" Elijah then replied, "Big man, is you and your father and your grandfather. Look man, it's all the relatives causing all this trouble down here. You decided that you weren't going to follow the commandments. You introduced Baal worship with that crazy woman you decided to marry and call a wife. Now here was the scene. Call Israel. Call the 450 prophets that eat at Jezebel's table. Call the 400 that operate in the groves and tell them, come and meet me on Mount Carmel." The challenge had been delivered. The proverbial gauntlet had been thrown down. The day of decision had been set. It was one man against 850 prophets of Baal. One man under the direction of God was about to come face to face with the apostasy that had swept over the land. God had one man, and that one man was going to go against a nation. The sun rose on a clear morning, lighting up the Mount of Carmel. Mount Carmel, located in the northwestern part of Israel, was a beautiful and fertile place. It contained lush forests and orchards surrounding it. But you see, it was also a high place, and was mentioned as a high place by, interestingly enough, the Egyptians. So everyone knew that this place was a center of idol worship. Elijah was going into the heart of idol worship to challenge what was taking place in Israel. Elijah was going to challenge Baal in his house. Very soon, from all over Israel, people started to gather on the mountain. On that mountain, bright and early, they saw Elijah, one man standing alone. Soon the prophets of Baal started to arrive with all their pomp and ceremony and fanfare, with the king Ahab in tow. There was surely a sight to behold as 850 of them came up the mountain. By this time, onlookers were gathered by the thousands all around the mountain. Elijah then stepped up and started to speak. How long we gonna do this thing? How long we going to play in the river on the bank? If Baal is God, serve him. But if the Lord is God, serve him. The people didn't say a word. Could you imagine that? These people who God brought out of Egypt, these people who God set apart from the rest of the world because of his servant Abraham, these people who God had led to the promised land through the desert with a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night, had nothing to say. These people who lived for 40 years in a desert with no food and water provided had nothing to say. The people had been so messed up by the idol worship that nobody could say, yeah, boy, Elijah, we're doing this thing too long now. We know the Lord is God and we are slackness. What a situation. What a position for God's chosen people to be in. They were so lost that they needed a sign to reignite the fire for God within them that had been extinguished by idol worship. But you see, their hesitance and unbelief did not faze or sway Elijah. Elijah said to the people, I am the last man, Jack. I alone remain a prophet of God. But look at how much of them come up here. Over 450 of them are prophets of Baal. Hear what? Bring us 2 young bulls. Then we will prepare them. They will prepare theirs and I will prepare mine. But do not light the sacrifice. Let them call on the name of their God and I will call on the name of the Lord. The God who answers by fire, he is God. Now the people all of a sudden got a voice and said, well, that makes sense. So Elijah gave the prophets of Baal the option to choose which bull they wanted and told them, well, organize all yourself. But remember, no fire. So the prophets of Baal organized the sacrifice and starting up the chant. Baal, oh Baal, Baal, oh Baal, Baal, oh Baal, send down the fire, Baal. Baal, oh Baal, Baal, oh Baal, Baal, oh Baal, send down the fire, Baal. But there was no answer. After 2 hours, the priest started to turn up the intensity and started shouting harder. They started even prancing around in order to get Baal to answer them. But there was no answer. At around midday, Elijah started to get tired of their craziness, so he started to taunt them. Hey, all that the man probably not home now. All they really make me come up this mountain and forget to check to see if the man would be home? Call harder, or he most likely sleeping. Call harder, make some more noise. He probably down in the backyard. Then he continued on taunting them further, saying, all you surely not parang in the wrong house. I thought this was a high place. Stretch all your hands higher. Maybe you'll get some better reception. When the prophets heard this, those fellas like they catch the power and started to cut up themselves with knives until blood started to flow and shout at the top of their lungs. They were accustomed doing this in their idol worship. Whole they were at it with shouting, blood, and frantic and erratic behavior. But there was no answer. Nothing happened. When Elijah had enough of them, he said to the people gathered, come close to me. Then he proceeded to rebuild the altar of God that had been torn down. He then prepared the sacrifice for the altar. Following this, he dug a trench around the altar and proceeded to drench it with water 3 times until the water had filled up the trench. Elijah then knelt and prayed this prayer. Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and that I have done all these things by your command. Immediately the fire of the Lord fell and burnt up the sacrifice. The wood, the stones, the water, it even burnt up the ground. When the people saw this, they fell on the ground and shouted, the Lord is God! The Lord is God! The Lord is God! Elijah then said to the people, you see those false prophets? Hold it over there. Hold every last one of them. We're going down to the brook of Kishon, we're going down to the Kishon Valley, and there all of the prophets we're going to put to death. Elijah then said to Ahab, go man eat. Water come back, don't beat up. As Ahab went on his way, Elijah climbed to the top of Mount Carmel, bent on his knees, and put his head between his knees. He then told his servant, "Go and look towards the sea and tell me what you see." When the servant went and looked, there was nothing. 6 times there was nothing to see. On the 7th time, however, the servant saw a cloud like a man's hand rising from the sea. Elijah then said to his servant, "Go and tell Ahab, get on his chariot before the rain stops them." As he was speaking, however, the sky became black and a strong wind accompanied the darkness. Heavy rain, bucket of drops started falling, and Ahab was caught in the rain on his way to Jezreel. The power of the Lord came upon Elijah, and listen to this now, man. Elijah ran all the way to Jezreel in front of the chariot of Ahab. Elijah led Ahab to the gate of his palace and went on his way. The water came back, and the wave of idol worship that had spread so rapidly across Israel had finally been brought to an end. Ledai, de. Oh, ho, 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 ho. Ledai, de. Oh, ho, 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 ho. The land was ripe with the wrong, with praise to bow in every song. With each day, the knowledge of God trampled down and down. Under Ahab, apostasy start. He led Israel down the idolatrous path. Soon there remained no knowledge of God left in any heart. Israel got badder and bad, with people behaving madder than mad. No concern, no thought for God who led from the start. God soon said enough is enough, and for the next 3 years the wasser line bust. No dew nor rain till Israel turns and remembers my name. From the countryside Elijah came to deliver the judgment in God's name. No dew nor rain till Israel turns and remembers my name. From the countryside Elijah came to deliver the judgment in God's name. No dew nor rain till Israel turns and remembers my name. Ledai, de. Oh, ho, 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 ho. Ledai, di de. Oh, ho, 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 ho.
Good morning, boys and girls. Happy Sabbath and a happy and bright new year to you all. We are so glad that every Sabbath you joined us for craft time in 2021. And we have a special invitation for you. This year, 2022, we are inviting you to send us your crafts. Send us photographs of your crafts. And of course, we want to know who did it. So give us your name and your age as well. And we are asking that you email it to arukasdacrafters@gmail.com, or you can send it on WhatsApp on 392-1590. It's in the description box below, and it's below this page as well. Thank you so much, and wishing you all the best. Bye.
The sky, but when traveling days are over, not a shadow, not a sign. When we all get to heaven. one glimpse of Him.